So, good afternoon, students. This is our next lecture, and the lecture is about ethics of managing change. So, ethics of managing change. We're going to look at how people manage a change in terms of ethics. So, we are going to explore issues within managing change and see how such issues help people to improve the society. Have a diagrammatic representation there. There is a diagram there. You can look at that diagram. The diagram is about change management. So change involves innovation. You need to be innovative. You need to be a planner, plan well. You need to be a team worker, set your goals well. The goals should be in line with the demands of the organization. There is the solution. There is the question of business and the process, or even strategy and a vision. So change is a very detailed concept, and it does not just stop at one component like innovation. People need to plan for change. There's need to plan for change. As we have said, we have also questions of innovation, teamwork, goals, business, coming up with solution, process, setting strategies, and having visions. So as we move on to this question, we look at the code of ethics for successful Six Sigma change management. So the successful Six Sigma change management involves seeking to use our knowledge as the skills for the enhancement of the organization. So use your knowledge for the enhancement of the organization. We also do not exercise the power of our expertise or position to influence the decisions or actions of others in order to benefit personally at their expense. So the second aspect is don't use power, don't use influence or expertise or position to influence the decisions or actions of others to benefit personally at their expense. Very importantly, people have been used positions, people have been used power, influence to benefit themselves. So we are trying to say here that in order to manage change, then you need to avoid that behavior, that aspect, that concept of using your influence, using your power, capability, just to benefit from others, to benefit from others. People have used influence, people have used power to gain opportunities. Then number 3, we are saying that we do not engage in communications or behavior designed to deceive others, including but not limited to making misleading statements, stating half-truths, providing information out of context, or withholding information that, if known, would render our statements as misleading or incomplete. So the third point is that we are trying to argue that you need to avoid cases of being deceit or deceiving. You need to avoid misleading statements. So don't mislead people, don't mislead the public, don't mislead the community. Do not state statements that are half truth. Then don't provide information out of context. Do not provide information out of context or withholding information that, if known, would render our statements as misleading or incomplete. So you need to be very careful on the information that you give to people, so that that information is not misleading, is not out of context, is not the half truth, is not true, etc. So we move on. So then we also talk about performing services only within our areas of competence. So you need to be a person who is all round. You perform many services, you perform many duties, not necessarily in your area of competence, but you can also help somebody. You can go on to support somebody who is unable to perform tasks. Then we seek to understand the organizational culture to avoid engaging in behaviors perceived as disrespectful. So understand the organizational culture to avoid engaging in behaviors that are viewed as disrespectful. Then you'll be managing change. Next point is that listen with empathy and seek first to understand others' points of view. So you listen with empathy. There are these two terms. We have empathy and sympathy. So empathy means getting into the shoe of others, listening to them, helping them out of the problem, solving the issue at hand that affects people. But sympathy, on the other hand, is the question of just saying sorry, then you move on. Sorry for what has happened, then you don't provide a solution to the problem that is mentioned. So then we need to behave professionally, even when it's not reciprocated. So behave professionally, you behave professionally, behave in a professional way, even if you are not paid. There's nothing that is paid back to you. So just behave professionally. That is very important. So professional behavior involves the following, but not limited to the following: time management, respect for the others, working hard, commitment, ensuring that you partake all the duties given on time. But even if you are not reciprocated, you are not paid, to reciprocate is to pay back. So even if you are not paid, then just behave professionally. We need to avoid conflicts of interest, or the appearance of conflicts of interest. Avoid those conflicts on issues within the organization don't take part in conflicts. Instead, provide a solution, provide a way out. Don't take part in conflicts. Then when we make errors or omissions, we take ownership and make prompt corrections. So whenever you're making errors or an omission in something, take ownership or make corrections, prompt corrections. Do not run away from those issues. Apply the rules of organization without favorism or prejudice. So you apply the rules of the organization without favorism or being prejudiced. So what is the role of ethics and responsibilities in leading innovation and the change? So we begin by saying that innovation and change are inevitable processes in the business world. So innovation and the change are inevitable processes in the business world. You need to understand that. So organizations are constantly evolving and are changing in response to market trends. And if your business is on the verge of restructuring or undergoing some other significant transformation, give due consideration to the role of ethics and responsibility as you move forward. So if the organization is undergoing some change or innovation, transformation, it is being restructured, then consider the role of ethics and responsibility as you move forward. That in a nutshell means that you need to consider questions of ethics as you get along. So the role of ethics and responsibility in leading and change, we want to look at the employees. So we are going to look at the people that lead innovation or individuals that lead innovation. So the first individual is employees. So one of the primary responsibilities of leading change and innovation is the need to keep your employees in mind as you implement changes. So whenever you are leading change or innovation, then you need to keep your employees in mind as you implement those changes. So as a small business owner who has the economic well-being of the employees in your hands, you have a certain level of responsibility to examine the changes you make from your employees' perspective. You have a certain level of responsibility to examine the changes you make from your employees' perspective. As much as possible, you want them to come out better on the other side of the change. So you want the employees to come out better in terms of change. So an employee is a very key component in terms of innovation, leading innovation, and the change. So let's look at another point, disruption. What is disruption, if I may ask? So change and innovation are disruptive not only to workers, but everyone involved with your business. change and innovation are disruptive not only to workers, but to everyone involved in your business. So this disruption requires that business owners take into account everyone involved in the process of change. So you need to take into account everyone involved in the process of change. Ask them questions about how change is disruptive and how to make it less so. So change can be disruptive. Say, for example, in a business, you are having a business employee who is not performing. How is that disruptive? You are having a strike. How is that strike disruptive in a business? So when you ask yourself those questions, then you get to find out that change is indeed disruptive. It can disrupt the smooth operation of a business. It can disrupt the communication process. It can disrupt the functioning of other areas or components of the business. So you need to be very careful in terms of these the changes that serve to be disruptive on business. Communication. Now, on communication, I want to talk about two things or three. Communication can be downward from the manager to the employees or manager to the supervisors. Communication can be upward from the employees to the manager or administrators, supervisors to the CEOs. Communication sometimes uh, can be lateral. By lateral, I mean the communication process takes place between all the parties involved. Say, for example, meetings held by the managers with their employees. So the communication that takes place on the part, like the downward communication from the manager to the employees, sometimes it's the communication that uh, is used whenever people or managers are giving out tasks and duties to partake. So managers give tasks or duties, and that's what we call downward communication. But if it's upward, then upward communication, the employees report information to the employers, etc. and etc. So ethics plays a role in the process of change and innovation in terms of the need for open and honest communication among employers and employees and between the company and even the public. So communication needs to be transparent during the process of change, needs to be transparent during the process of change so that continued trust in the organization will exist once the changes have been completed. So we are looking at communication that is transparent. You need to be transparent in your communication, communicate transparently so that people don't have doubt in your communication. So transparency in communication is very key. So all the communicators within the communication process should be transparent with each other. Then we move on. The question of teamwork comes in. So who can remind us what is teamwork? You should have found out the answer what teamwork is. Teamwork is about collaboration to perform a given task or activity. So ethical behavior toward the community and employees will help the business owner build a stronger organization. So you can build a strong organization through teamwork. The sense of pride that employees take away from participating in the process of change will provide them with a great sense of belonging and a purpose. Then the responsibility of the business owner and the manager is to make innovation and the change a process that affects and that benefits everyone. So those are things that entail teamwork. Now let's look at the ethics-based model for change management. So what does this model demonstrate? What does the model demonstrate? So number one is define required change. So we are saying that you study the internal requirement and the external pressures for change to identify the need of change. External pressures for change in order to identify the need for change, that whether the change is really required by the organization or not. If the change is not extremely required, then try to steer away from change implementation if possible and do not disturb the existing status quo. So you define the required change, find out within the organization which kind of change is required. And if that kind of change that you are thinking of is not required, then try as much as you can to move away from that. Then evaluate, define change in terms of ethics to identify all the stakeholders for the defined change of the first the employer should himself evaluate the change in terms of ethics to know whether this change is right and justifiable for all the stakeholders rather than being just in favor of employer and need sacrifices from employees in name of change management or organizational development. So you need to evaluate uh, the defined change, evaluate the defined change, have an evaluation and find out the benefits of having such kind of a change, assess the change. And then number three, define an ethical change by aligning the defined change and the combined ethics of both stakeholders. So you define the ethical change. And this is a step where change will be defined in such a way that no one will have an objection over it in terms of ethics, as everyone would have been involved in defining the phase of an ethical change. So you define the ethical change so that by defining the ethical change, you involve all the stakeholders, all the parties. And by doing that, no one will complain about the kind of change that you are initiating. Don't initiate change without involving all the stakeholders. So then after you have done that, then you communicate the defined ethical change to all the stakeholders and inform them about the implementation plan. So once the change has been adopted, has been decided upon by stakeholder, then communicate it to the entire group of members. So then the defined change is then communicated to stakeholders as a mutually agreed and shared objective for all. So you communicate this kind of change. You don't keep it to yourself. Don't keep it yourself. It is not yours. It is part of what should be communicated to the stakeholders and even other members of the organization. The next, a very important point is that you implement the ethical change. Once you have communicated the stakeholders, then the next bit is you implement the change. Implement this kind of change to individuals by keeping all the stakeholders in the loop. Involve the people in the change implementation and train them. The change should be implemented all from top management to lower level staff. So we are saying that you need to implement this ethical change, and by implementing it, then what we are meaning is that you involve all the members of staff, involve all the members of staff, all the members of the organization. It's very important that you do that to the betterment of the organization. Then number 6, re-evaluate and implement change in light of ethics by getting feedback from all the stakeholders. Then take feedback from all stakeholders or representatives of stakeholders in order to evaluate the change implementation. So as you re-evaluate the implemented change, then get a feedback from the concerned parties, get feedback from the members of staff, get feedback from both the junior and the senior staff. That is very key, and it's a very important concept whenever you are implementing, you are re-evaluating the implemented change. So you don't just implement change and you leave it there. There is a time when you have to re-evaluate it to find out the benefits of this kind of change to a given organization. So then we move on and they talk about point number 7. Point number 7, talk about point number 7. So in response to positive feedback, celebrate the successful implementation of change. So celebrate this implementation of change with all the stakeholders. You need to celebrate with them. It's very important that you celebrate because everybody took part in this kind of a change process. So you don't need to leave anyone aside. Make sure that everybody takes part in the celebration. So this kind of a celebration can be in the form of having a party, having dinner together, or even giving gifts to those who did or those who performed well in implementing this kind of change. Then if the majority of, this positive response is an indication that future change projects in this manner will also run smoothly as the employers had won the trust of stakeholders by the implementation of ethical change in the organization. So basically, that is how the model operates, the EM model. That's how the model operates, ethics change management model or ethics-based model for change management. There are 7 key areas that we are focused on, and we have dealt in those areas of the model. So we shall move on. So I will present some of the photos here. There's some 2 or 3 photos here. As I summarize our discussion, then I will play a video if it's possible for you. Then you'll see what we are talking about. So let's look at this model. Let's look at this picture here. You can read through what is written on that picture. Then we shall get time to discuss it briefly as we move on to the next picture. Now, you have looked at that picture, and from the picture you can see a number of writings. There are detailed writings there, but that's not the point we want to belabor. We want to look at this model, or this diagram in terms of what change management is all about. So in this diagram, you can see that change management is about execution of the plan. You need to have the strategy. What are the strategies of managing change? Communication, how do you communicate? Communication, as we said, should be transparent. Communication should be effective, and the communication should be a pointer to good results. There's need to have teamwork, vision. You need to have vision to manage change. You need to have values. What are some of your core values? Values of respect. Have the values of respect. coordination, determination, commitment, trust. Those are some of the values that help you to manage change in terms of ethics. Organization, how organized are you? How organized are you in terms of the performance of duties? What process are you using? Are you measuring this change? How do you measure change? Measurement of change. Solution, what solution have you come up with? What criteria are you using to improve the performance in a workplace? So you need to have a good criteria. Development, improvement. What are the areas of improvement? What are some of the areas of improvement? What are your leadership skills in the organization? So it's very important to look at the ethics in terms of change management in light of those elements that you have just stated or mentioned. These elements are repeated because there is a reason to this. Whenever you are talking about ethics in terms of the workplace or a change management in relation to ethics, then these are some of the issues you need to discuss or even highlight. Let's move on to another picture, and I'll still give you some time to look at the picture as we mention about those issues presented on the picture. Then we shall be heading towards the end of our session. Now, so far is so good. You must have looked at that more presentation of change management. So to ensure that there is a change management, then there are things that you ought or you need to do. You need to engage people, engage all the people involved in the process. You need to plan for the activities you want to take part in. You need to improve the way of handling the duties. So there should be an improvement. You need to have a team that works to change management. Have a team, a good team, a serious team. Execute the process. Do some measurement. You measure change. How is change measured? How do you measure change? So work on those things to ensure that change is managed ethically. So remember, we are focusing on how change can be, ethics that involves change management. And we have summarized those things. We have given a summary in form of diagrammatic representation. There are two photos that you have given there. So read through those writings on those photos, then you'll get to understand better on how people can manage the change. It's very imperative, it's very important that you do those things that you have just highlighted here. Now, I just want to give a brief summary on ethics in terms of change, or ethics of managing change. And I want to begin by saying that change is an area that affects our life. Change affects organizations' planning. Change affects the organization structure, and a change sometimes can be positive or negative. So if you are dealing with the organization or you're handling an organization, then you need to focus on those aspects so that you don't become a victim of circumstances, so that change does not come in to disrupt the order. But sometimes that disruption might be positive. So you look at, if the disruption is positive, then you can adopt that kind of change in a society. But if it's not disrupted, then you can adopt it. But if it's disrupted, then you can stop it from taking place. So change should be taken as a very serious component of life. And without focusing on these aspects of change keenly, then institutions sometimes might collapse or fall. Institutions sometimes fall because of failure to manage change. Now, we have had some time here, nearly an hour, discussing about ethics of managing change. And I will present something here again briefly. So just hold on. I present an issue here.
And today's video, I want to talk about sure that we're going to talk about
So in that presentation, the presenter talks of having a coalition of people, which is teamwork. So get a coalition of people that will help you manage a change. So you need to have a coalition, you need to have a team. We have talked about teamwork quite often. And, I don't want to belabor that point. But for today, thank you for your time. Shall end that this afternoon session. Then we shall pick up another time. Thank you. Let's meet another.